Okay, we're on. Okay, so let's start. I want you all to know that these, we call it questions and answers, but I like the old title of, what did we used to call it? Spiritual answers or something. It wasn't as mundane as questions and answers. I feel more than almost ever, and I've said this to many of you before, that when we do these, when questions come, I feel the masters come to answer them very often. And answers come that I wouldn't have known. I've shared with all of you that used to happen for me when I was practicing medicine. And I felt so close to Master in medicine. And suddenly an answer would come, something maybe that was mentioned once in your third year of medical school, some mundane. You can imagine the wealth of knowledge, the fund of knowledge that one would need to have to practice medicine. It's impossible to carry it all. It's just impossible. And I'm sure computers have helped a great deal. They weren't around as much when I was doing it. So all of those conditions that we learned, you just had to pray about it. I always wondered what happened for doctors who didn't pray. Because really, it's the truth. I've told you all that story of the man, very feisty, older man. I think he was close to 80. Many of you have heard this story. He was the father of the head nun at the hospital that I worked in. It was a huge Catholic hospital. And I took care of all of the nuns. They just all came to me. There were many of them throughout the hospital in charge of every department. And one day, this nun, I forget what her name was, sister, whoever, brought her father to me. And he was just so grumpy and gruff. I never come to doctors. He wasn't even my patient. He was one of my partner's patients, but they were away. And it was one of those days where I was seeing my patients and their patients. And so it was very busy. It's like boom, 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 4 rooms running, patients. Not a good way to practice medicine, actually, because you really need to go to the room, get present, stop. Go to the next room, get present, stop, pray. I always prayed. And I hate doctors, he said. I never go to doctors. I said, okay, that's fine, but you're here now. What's going on? I don't need to be here. It's my daughter's fault. This is how he was talking to me. So he had this back pain, and he was saying to me, it's nothing. And he was tough, you could tell. And he was close to 80. You figure whatever his system was, it was working. So I didn't want to interrupt that system. I felt respectful of it. But she said to me, this pain was so bad last night, Dr. Rubenstone, that he kept vomiting from it. It's just like a sign. Because many, many people come to see you for back pain. Many. Most of the time, it's not dangerous. But you're always looking for those times when it is. It's important in medicine. When is the headache the sign of something else? When is the back pain? Anyway, I go to examine him, and he has this mottled skin on his side. You know what that is? It's sort of red and almost purplish and a little white coming through when you see skin that's mottled. I didn't know what it meant, but I knew it wasn't usual. I didn't know what that was going down his side. But at that moment, I knew that he was in trouble. And I said to him, I need to send you to the emergency room. I am not going to the emergency room. And I said, I can either call an ambulance and they'll come and take you, or you can go with your daughter. It was very close. Just like a child. If you want them to wear a dress when they're little, you don't say, would you like to wear jeans or a dress? You say, which dress would you like to wear? It's sort of like that. And he said, all right, I'll go with my daughter, but I want to go home and pick up a few things. said, no, you're not going home. I was looking at her. I knew she would listen to me. He leaves. I call the ER. I say, see this man immediately. Because it was that feeling that I started describing about, and if we're blessed today, they'll be there in the same way. That I knew it. It wasn't me. I didn't know the answer. I just knew there was an answer, and it was concerning. So they get him to the ER. I call the ER, the doc, who I know well, see him right away. Something's going on that's very concerning. The doc takes one look at him, and he remembers the sign. What does that mean? Back pain plus mottled skin. I don't remember the name of it now. He calls the OR. He says, this guy has a dissecting aortic aneurysm that is about to rupture. They get him literally in minutes up to the OR, open him up, and that aneurysm ruptures right when they have clamps there. I mean, if 2 minutes, and he would have been gone. If you rupture your aorta, you just do what's called bleeding out immediately. It's all very concerning situation. Then everybody was calling me saying, great pickup, great call. And I'm saying, no, I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything. That was the truth. But being open to the masters and that intuition, which we all do. I no longer practice medicine, but of course I'm practicing trying to do that in every moment. So it's very meaningful that we all invite them in so that these questions can be answered with their wisdom. That's what we want. That's what we're praying for. So, puja. We are recording this, so.
Sometime when days are sunny, our minds work better and our energy is better. And sometime when the days are rainy, our energy falls and our meditations are not good and we feel anxious. So is there a way that happens in life situations also? Sometimes we can analyze our energy is better, and other times because of life circumstances we cannot hold us in our center. So what are some good techniques to hold us in center and being even-minded rather than scattered?
That's actually a very good question because it applies to everything in life. But once particularly like rainy days, so the incidence of depression is much higher in areas where there's more rainfall. We know that. The incidence of alcoholism is extremely high in places like Alaska, northern places, where they go through months of darkness. I mean, it just says to us how important and meaningful light is. And we could think of that just as this external source of light that we need, or we could use it as an opportunity to continuously tune in to that inner light that shines constantly within each of us, but we're turned away from it. We're not looking into the light. And whatever situation, if there's a situation that develops, well, every situation that's difficult, every single one, our practice is that constant practice to look towards that light. It's there. We are light. It's not anything that we need to become. We are it, but we're busy trying to look outside for it. What was the Master said one time, let me just see if I can remember, he said, it's like trying to use a candle to guide you on a bright, sunny day. You have all the light you need, but is what he said, not me. And we're looking for those sources. So that how do we do that? First of all, is that we, as much as often, we practice it mindfully, that we say to ourselves, where's the light here? Where's the light here? Where's the light here? As soon as we find ourselves struggling, and because we all know, so we tune in, we find that inner light, we keep remembering it, because of course we forget, of course we do. But the more we practice, the less we forget. And there's really no other way. Whatever we need to do, we can keep images of the masters in front of us in as many ways as we can, in every room of our house, on our computers, on our cell phones. I mean it, just because we won't remember them. We will find ourselves behaving in ways that we do not want to behave. And a big one is forgetting that we don't really need that outer source of light. Right now, I probably say, there are people who say, oh, I love the rain, and I'm sure they do, but 90 days in a row of it, or, I heard how many people, last year certainly, but even this year, people would say to me, oh, I'm praying for the drought again, when it was raining so much. And I would say, don't put that thought out. You can pray for the rain to stop now, but please don't pray for the drought to come back. But we get tired of those things. But I have found, and I see it in my own home, that those things, I don't love months in a row of rain. It's not my favorite. I also really love the sunshine outdoors. But I could see the difference in how the rain was affecting me and how it was affecting Barry. It was absolutely obvious because he doesn't have the same practice of finding that lightness of being within. And of course, I forget way more often. I'm shocked at how often I forget, if the truth be told. I keep saying, you know better than this. How are you here again? But I keep coming back. And then we find that the times that we're just living from it, the times where whatever it is, we don't snap at someone, we don't carry negative thoughts of anybody ever. Now, probably none of us can say that right now. I mean, maybe some of you can. I don't want to say it for sure. But most of us, most human beings in the world, have a negative thought about somebody. Not even what we would consider negative. Why are they wearing those clothes today? Why did they marry? What did they see in that person? What? But the more that we practice, the less that happens. And the problem with all of that is that as that happens, it affects us, not them. When we get angry at somebody, snap at somebody, it's terrible for us. So I think the spiritual practice path is just, that's what it is. It's constantly bringing ourselves back. So, yeah, not anything you didn't know, but even the question, we need to keep repeating those answers.
Just repetition makes a vibration in the air, and that holds us there.
Yeah.
But at the time of meditation, that rub happens, that, well, this has happened, that has happened, this calculation, that cooking, all that. And the meditation is happening. Pranayama is happening in the face of that. So just practice is the way.
Yeah. And you know, japa, I think you just said that, right? You said japa meditation, didn't you?
No, I said pranayam, but japa is...
But, okay, I thought you said japa, but I heard it.
Yeah.
So japa is an interesting thing that I don't do often enough. You know, I think now when I used to be a big runner, or even when I used to hike the dish, walk the dish most days, if I was alone, I would be listening. Music was so uplifting. And many times I wasn't listening to our music, when sometimes I would listen to something like the oratorio, which really gets me up, but not always. I would listen to some of the music from my past, and then the run would be over before I knew it, or the dish, I'd be coming to the end, and I'd be surprised. And then some years ago, I started saying to myself, why aren't you doing japa? Why aren't you just repeating God, Christ, Guru, God, Christ, as you walk, just constantly? Because as you say, the vibration, it's in such an uplifted vibration. And remembering that Master told us to do that changes everything. You know, so it's Master's japa that we're doing, and it changes our energy.
Just a comment.
James is the
Just,
okay.
yeah. Just a comment that in one of the online classes I heard that as we have a secret beloved, when we grow up, we have a secret beloved. Our Guru can be in our heart like that secret beloved. To see his face or his eyes, just a refuge from all that is happening, and feel him near. So that can be one of the follow-up from the japa.
Yeah, that's, you know, several of you have already heard me say this because I've mentioned it now in a couple of classes and different meetings. But Darshan from Italy just wrote a book that's about to come out. Crystal Clarity has it printed, and it'll be available by next week. And he's actually coming here in May. He's a really great soul. But he wrote a book called, but it's not called Awakening the Natural Love of the Heart. And I just finished reading it a couple of days ago. He had sent me a PDF because he wanted me to write a commentary on it. But anyway, so I got to read it. And it's about removing the meannesses of the heart. And as we do, how the natural love of the heart is there, and we find it. And he doesn't say this in the book. I said it in my testimonial. I said, what this book, with such simple language, but constantly quoting the masters, constantly, beautifully, keeps saying is, we begin to realize that we don't need to learn about love. We don't need to find it. We are it. And as we remove these meannesses, it's revealed to us. Now, we all probably know those words, but even reading his book, I read it. I had to read it quickly because I was very, very late for the writing. In fact, I was so late, didn't make it into the book, but it will make it on a publication page, which is just fine. It's just what happened. But I wrote that, and as I read the book, I could feel just reading it, I mean, in a very sweet way. That's what this book is. It's the deepest teachings, but shared with such simplicity that I could just feel my heart opening. So the next day, I read it again, And it's about 170 pages. It's not like a little short pamphlet, but just really what you're talking about. There's so much beauty in this book and wisdom, real wisdom. I mean, I just feel like it was delivered so that anybody could read it, and in the reading of it would be transformed. But like everything else we do, we'll have to read it again and again. But when I realized what that meant, awakening the natural love, removing the meannesses, and that's what he's saying. The love is there. Start removing, meannesses. It's a hard word for us because we don't think of ourselves as being mean. That's not how we hold ourselves. But the meannesses of the heart, great to see you. The meannesses of the heart are all of the things, interestingly, for those of you who have come to the Secrets of Prosperity class, and we just covered the secret that was the secret of prosperity it's worded better than this, but remembering that there are no such things as obstacles in life, but in fact, everything that we would ever call an obstacle is an opportunity to awaken spiritually. And it came to me to start that class with Patanjali's teachings, because Patanjali, he doesn't call them meannesses, but they're the same meannesses. Those things, greed, jealousy, gossip, all of those things that human beings just do. We do them. And we will keep doing them until we're free. So the worst thing we can do is judge ourselves. That's the worst thing, because it just keeps us bound in this world. So we don't want to do that. But as Patanjali says in one of his niyamas, we must notice them. We must do that I forget what it's called, introspection or
Swadhyaya.
Self-study, thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, too many sounds coming up this way at once. Self-study or introspection. We have to do that, but we have to learn to do it as God would do it. God does not see us with any faults. Imagine, he sees us as being perfect in his image. Perfect. This is not supposed to be just a talk. I'll just say this and then I'll stop. But it's all in response to that. That beautiful moment when Jesus greets Judas, knowing that Judas had just said to the Romans, "You keep your eye on me, and the man that I hug is the man that you're looking for." Those were his words. And he comes up and he hugs Jesus. And Jesus says to him with pure love, "Hello, friend. Hello, friend. But you hugged me to betray me." He told the truth, but with no meanness, no lack, pure love. I mean, just imagine that, knowing that he was turning him in to be crucified. Would even be something else if he was turning him in to be shot. That would be easy, right? But to be nailed to a cross, and yet pure love. That love was never blemished by any human quality. It's really remarkable. Does anybody else have a question?
This is a practice, right? This is a practice,
This is the practice. Yeah. And this is why we're here, honestly, to ask these questions and have these teachings come again and again and again until look around the room. Everybody in this room, I know almost all of you, except for one. I know everybody else in the room. But even for anybody, we've all grown, whether it's been 2 years on the path, 50 years on the path. We've all grown through practice. That's what we're doing. And then we're free. But we know more and more and more lightness of being and joy, almost moment by moment. Letty has the mic, Michael, then we'll bring it to you. She's going to ask. Letty, ask your question.
Oh, no, I don't have a question. I was just grabbing the mic.
Oh, okay.
So you're talking about presence. Is the practice, is that presence?
Is the practice presence?
Yeah, you're talking about practice.
Yeah, we are practicing the presence.
Right.
So they're not exactly the same, though. Yes, at some point, we hope it becomes one. But practicing the presence of God, moment by moment, in everything.
I have another question. So recently I have read Transitioning in Grace by Nalini Graeber. Are you familiar with that book? Yeah. So she talks a lot about the different stories of people who've died. You know, the Kriya Yogi dying. So she talks about her, the final exam and how our consciousness at that brink of transition can affect our next life or where we go, essentially, after we die. So can you talk about the final exam quickly or slowly?
Well, you know, one thing that's important about what Master called the final exam, which is that how we pass, literally, where our mind is, where our consciousness is, what attitudes we're holding as we're leaving. And it's always fascinated me. So this could sound silly, but it's not. But I practice. I literally sometimes practice dying so that I can leave well, leave with right attitude, leave with God on my mind, leave with an open heart, not leave caught in all of the body stuff or, gee, I wish I had done this, or why didn't I do, which is how most people die. I've been around so many people as they've died. And there's a lot of regret that people realize right in those last moments. And Master tells us, don't do that. You remember when Swamiji was at he went to see a man who was in the hospital. And when he came back, Master said, how was he? And asked about him. And Swamiji said he kept talking about how he wished he had done other things in his life. And Master, who's Yogananda, just said, oh, I wish he hadn't done that. Because at that last moment, our energy determines so much about what happens. You know, we talk about the astral plane. We talk about it like there is one astral plane, but there are many astral worlds, and we don't all go to the same one. Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, because we are on a path where so much of it intentionally was kind of, the language was changed. It was westernized for us. So it's not always like it's shared in India, but because I had that Indian teacher, Sankeshva Das, who I've spoken about many times, spent so many years with him, traveling with him, literally living with him, I got to hear much more of some of the more, they're just truths, but they're a little more esoteric. And so I heard these. But there are many different astral, we can call them planes, but they're actually astral worlds. So there's not one place. It's not like, oh, we get out of here. You know, even the astral worlds can be very different experiences. Now, that's not so important for us to understand right now, because all we need to do right now is know. It's like taking any class or course or being in college. Most of us, unlike Swamiji, we have to study as we go. If we don't, when we get to the final exam, we probably won't do well. I used to have a recurring nightmare. It was a nightmare. I haven't had it now for years. Thank you, God. I think it means something spiritually in my life. But the dream was always that I was there and I had to go in the next day and take an exam in a very hard course. And I realized at the moment that I never took the course. I forgot. I forgot to go to classes. I forgot to read the book. I forgot to do the homework. And I was horrified. I mean, it was a nightmare. It was just a nightmare. I knew I was going to fail. And I think it's very significant that that dream doesn't come anymore, because I'm not great at interpreting dreams, but you can hear it was not a great dream to have. So all of life is preparing for that final exam. Spiritually, that's what we're doing. That's the answer to the first question. I mean, all of it. We're just getting ready. But I will say one more thing about that. It's been an incredible privilege for me on this path to watch how many people who have been on this path for decades and who were very close to Swamiji left their bodies. When Swamiji told Leela, who had been, Leela, I'm sorry, I started saying Layla, but then I was going back. Now it's Leela. Who had been with him. Well, she had been on the path all of her adult life, but she was with him. It's funny, she was known as his cook, and she was his cook. But being his cook was her life's spiritual work. She was a very deep soul. There are many stories about her, although they're interesting because she was preparing for the final exam. She would often leave events early to get home to prepare exactly something for Swamiji the way he wanted it, exactly. Or she never left the consciousness of serving her teacher, never, which is amazing. So she would be introduced, oh, this is Swamiji's cook. It's an interesting thing. But the way she was doing it as a very high being was different. But she was diagnosed with lung cancer one day. She went, she had her X-ray lung cancer. When she came back, Swamiji said to her, you will die. This is how you'll leave your body. And she went into her apartment, which was very close to Swamiji, up at Crystal Hermitage. She never came back out. And she chose her visitors very carefully because she was going to die consciously with God in right attitude. It was beautiful. We all know this story of Devarshi's wife, Maria. Same thing, had an MRI, tumor, her breast cancer had gone into her brain. She went home, would only see certain people. Even when Jyotish and Devi came to see her, they talked for a while. And then she said to them, all right, enough. Get out of here. You have work to do. They had flown up from LA where they were involved in, was Swamiji still alive then? Yes, he was. They were down there doing big work with Swamiji, living with Bharati at the time. We've all heard a lot of those stories. She looked at them, get out of here. Go home, you have work to do. And that beautiful line, which is on my altar, but I never remember, so you can, how it starts, so you could all help me. What she said to Devarshi as they walked in for the MRI. Detach yourself. Control the, detach yourself, which he said himself here, he was having trouble doing. He was not detached from the fact that she was leaving. Detach yourself. Control the reactive process. That's what we all live with, and then live the teachings. That's what she said to him going in for the MRI. She knew. She knew. She said to him over and over, this tumor's in my brain now. I mean, she was very symptomatic. Wasn't hard to know. Anyway, so this is right up to that last moment. Master said there's 3 seconds that are very difficult when you're leaving your body. They're very difficult. He said that. We could hear that they're very difficult, or we can hear 3 seconds. 3 seconds. I remember when I used to, I don't know, I don't go into gyms anymore, but did any of you ever get on what's called a Stairmaster? I used to get on those Stairmasters, put them at the highest level, and just go for an hour. And people would say to me, how do you do that? And I would say, I could do anything for an hour. I could do anything. I just determined that. Now I'm being told it's 3 seconds. I hold on to that. Yeah. Okay, it's hard. I'm going to stay here. I think about it a lot. Okay?
Sorry to hog the mic here. Can you talk about the astral ascension ceremony real quickly?
Can I talk about it?
The astral ascension ceremony? Yeah. So it's primarily for the person who's passed, but the people that read it, it's helpful for them as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think everybody here has probably heard it. If you haven't, you could read it. It could be sent to you. It's something that came to Swamiji. And it's a beautiful, beautiful, it's beautiful energy and consciousness with which to send that soul off, releasing them from any hold you might have had on them. Also asking for their prayers once they attain that next level of consciousness, once they're in the next plane. And then speaking about, and as for us, he says, I don't remember all of the words to it, it doesn't matter, but he puts in our mind how we will hold that situation. Not how we will die, but how we will hold the passing of this person, this soul that we've obviously been involved with and probably attached to because we're doing the astral ascension, cared about, whatever the words are. So, yeah, I think that's enough about, yeah.
This is very layered.
Layered.
But I want to talk about cooperative obedience. And I have friends that are directly going to their spiritual leaders or guides and asking for help or guidance, and then they get that, and then they go, no, I'm not going to do that. And so I'm wondering, what are the consequences of that? And also, on the spiritual plane, how do we discriminate between doing what's ours and knowing that that's not ours to do.
You know, since Christmas, I've had this experience, I'm just explaining myself for a moment, of feeling what I think was something akin to what Christ felt, that he loved everybody so deeply, and yet he couldn't share the highest teachings with them. And believe me, I'm not comparing myself to Christ, of course, but that feeling has started to come to me more often since Christmas, feeling such pure love for people, and yet not being, and seeing something, knowing, but not being able to share it with them yet. And it's very painful, actually, when you love somebody that much. I'll bet we've all had that experience, maybe with children or at least. But so the first thing I want to say about cooperative obedience is that because we are now living, obviously without Master in the body, and now without Swamiji for almost 11 years, it's very complicated. Our mind can work its tricks or trickery better. If you went to Swamiji and he told you something, like he told me, you have so much ego right now, let it go, and you will, were his words to me, Shanti has so much ego. When she lets it go, she will, he didn't say you'll be a great soul, but he basically, the most important thing of this sentence was the implication that I'd be able to. That's what I took away. That's why it never bothered me that he said that in front of 25 people at a dinner table. Most people here know that story. Just stopped. Nothing was happening about it. He just suddenly said, oh, Shanti and Barry. And he says that we have a lot of ego. Literally, people had forks like this, stopped. And then we just all waited. I was not bothered by it because I think what I heard was, oh, I'm going to be able to let go of a lot of that. So I didn't think that, but I think that's what happens anyway. So we don't look at anybody now and see or feel, that's Swamiji. I will trust everything he says to me. Or when you have a true inspiration and when you know, absolutely, it's very tricky because the ego is so good at what it does, but there are times when something comes, you know it to be true, might even be something you don't want to do, but you know it to be true. There are souls around us who have been on this path and other paths probably for lifetimes. They're highly evolved. We know that. We know that we are living amongst some people who are highly evolved, but we don't have Swamiji. Swamiji once said, I read this, if you're around somebody who's been on the path even a little longer than you, listen very carefully to what they say. He wrote that. I say to people often, find one or two people that you feel in your heart you can trust. Nobody's going to be a perfect being. We don't have that now. We don't. That's the truth. Everybody that we would go to, everybody still has some bit of ego. So it's complicated. This cooperative obedience is complicated. And yet, Swamiji wrote in the Sadhaka vow, I think, is where it starts. I could be wrong. I think that's the first time cooperative obedience is mentioned. And he wrote it, and he said to that leader, and then he breaks it down. So he's implying it's Jyotish right now, and he's also implying or the spiritual leaders of Ananda worldwide. So he has said to us, basically, look, I'm not always going to be here, but you will need to have some spiritual guides. We do. We all do. Now, what happens when I ask Jyotish and Devi a question and something deep in me does not agree with the answer? Or Jyotish, for instance, about a year ago or so, made a comment to me. I just cleared this up with him less than a month ago, but this is a year ago. He made the comment to me that I'd like to, Lakshmi, what was the word he used? Fix people? Help? You don't remember. I told you about it at the time. It was not necessarily speaking to a high quality. I heard it. I didn't agree with it. I felt like I do like to be there for people who are in trouble if I know that they are sincere in wanting to make spiritual progress and they have some capacity to do that. I will be there for certain people. Certain people are they're just coming to me. I mean, I could tell you who they are. There are people around Ananda who have called and said, hey, I want to talk to you. I think you could help me. Great. But they're spiritually inclined. They're starting centers or teachers, or not just go and save everybody. It's not who I am. I think he used the word save. I just a few weeks ago had the opportunity to say, you know, you told me that, and it hasn't sat with me. Here's how I see myself. And he said to me, that's accurate. But I didn't say to him at the time, I don't agree with you, that's not. I just sat with it for almost a year, you know. And they have said other things to me that I just in the moment don't agree with. And I'm using myself and them because they are who I go to. Now, there's other people that I could say, I've chosen these people to go to with questions. And when they tell me things that don't feel right, I've chosen a couple of people who I feel, this is key to me, have the ability to put their egos aside when I ask something of them. Not that they don't have any ego, because of course everybody does. But who can put it aside, sit with me, get into my spine and see what's next for me, not what they would like me to do, just some random thing, you know? I asked Jyotish and Devi a question 3 times over a period of years. Could I do this? And they told me, no, you cannot do it. And I didn't. And I just went to them again. And I said, I've asked you this many times, but I genuinely feel that it's hindering my spiritual growth to keep doing this thing. And they got very quiet, and they both said, we agree with you now. Now, you've asked us many times, we've told you no. Now, yes. But I listened to them even when I felt deeply the first 3 times, because I've put my soul in their care. We must choose a couple of people, 1 person, 2 people, who we can trust to have our spiritual well-being in mind. That is so important. We're not talking at the personality level. We're not talking likes and dislikes. We're talking about the pure love of the heart and somebody's genuine desire to help us, to help our soul, not our personality, but somebody who also has their heart open enough that they can carry us and see our next step. So they're not going to set us up for failure. We don't feel beaten up by them. You know, he's, Piyush, he's not actually bothering me. Kushi, can she hear me? You tell her, it's fine. If he starts screaming the way we know he can sometimes. But right now he's just talking and working it out, it's fine. I want Kushi to be able to be around. Okay. Sorry. Those are two of my spiritual children, Kushi and Piyush. I love that they're here. So, and it's a big deal. They have these two little ones, but they get up and make it here. It's really pretty remarkable. Of course, with the help of Supriya and others, but anyway. So does that answer the first part of your question at all? If it doesn't, you can say. That is cooperative obedience, actually.
When my friend, it's very clear that they are, well, it's clear to all of us that the answer was correct, but maybe not to them. My question is, what is the karma they're piling on?
If they can't
If they
cooperate.
If they say, I hear you, but no, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah. Well, you know, because I happen to be very involved in situations with you right now, and it's hard to clear that out. First of all, there is nothing we can do. Nothing. And what they're doing, all of us, what we all do when we can't choose the higher path, is we're just delaying our spiritual progress. But, you know, there are just times when we can't do it. You know, I just told the story recently. Where was that? Where Asha was telling me, this is 18 years ago probably, to do something, and saying to me, oh, Shanti, it's just, she wanted me to move out of my house. It's a long story, and I don't want to go into. And she was chiding me for caring that I didn't want to move again. I had moved 4 or 5 times in about 4 years, my first 4 years in Ananda. And it was hard on me. I was working full-time as a physician. I was working full-time at the Sangha. I was moving and moving and moving. And I didn't want to move. And I didn't feel in that instance that I should have to move. And she came over to tell me, just move, let it go. It's nothing, literally just like that. And I said, it's not nothing to me. And then she kept telling me, you have to do this. Why can you not do this? And finally, I had to literally say to her, please leave. Please leave. I can't do this right now. I know the truth. I know it as clearly as you do. I'm not there. And when you keep telling me that, I just feel badgered, is what I felt. But I also said to her, I can't stand to hear myself whine. I hate that. In 2 days, I'll be clear, but I'll get there my own way. And that was, I mean, we can only do what we can do. Is it great? No. And then there's another instance, and I just will speak to it. And that is when certain medical, when the mind is altered beyond somebody's ability, usually psychiatrically, but with dementia, people ask me a lot of questions about demented parents or friends. There is no bad karma that's accrued. Don't ask me how I know that, but I'll say it with that strength. There isn't any. The best thing we can do with and for those people is remember ourselves that they are God's children, not ours. That God has never taken his eye off of them, no matter the situation and no matter how difficult it is to watch whatever it is, people who won't accept help for any situation. I mean, we're dealing with it in our community right now with a lot of people who are older, and yet they won't say yes to help. And it's painful. And then I always say to myself, Shanti, God has them right in his hands. You know, that notion of wanting people to be different than who they are for our convenience, we will accrue bad karma. When I say bad, I don't think karmic is really good or bad, but we're accruing karma that we're going to have to come back. Who knows how many lifetimes it's going to cost us when we forget that. Now, can we try and support somebody if we see, you know, it's like watching your child who's a year old, and you see that they're just about ready to walk or to crawl, and you put a piece of something that they love, candy usually, if the truth be told, something sweet, just out of their reach or over on a chair, and you watch how quickly they'll get up and walk to it. You know, we're finding ways to help them take their next steps. That's literal, but even figuratively. If we're doing that with the hope that they can do that, that's fine, but not because we need them to do that. And it is painful. It is very painful. And as I said, we're all going through it, so it's coming up right now. Their karma is not our problem. If we make it our issue, that's our problem. But their karma, anybody else's karma, is not our problem to solve. God is watching them, and he'll take care of them. And sometimes it's harder than others to remember that. But it doesn't make it less true. Does that answer your question? Great. This spiritual path is hard.
We have a question from an online viewer that's in a similar thread, so I'll ask it and you may have something to expound upon it. Have you ever made a decision that felt right in your heart, calm and clear, that was supported by your spiritual advisors, but a close friend told you you were absolutely wrong, egoic and self-centered, and ended the friendship? If so, how did you navigate this spiritually?
You know, as we grow spiritually, our past lives, including parts of the one that we're living, because we see that as we grow spiritually, that which we held on to 10 years ago, we now see we need to let go of. External things, relationships, this is what we're doing with our consciousness, with our mind. We used to love to have a beer with dinner. Now we don't. And for a while, people will say, I've heard it many times, they'll move into the community, but I still want to go out and have a glass of wine occasionally. And I still like to play with my friends. Absolutely, do it. What am I going to do, say no? I mean, of course. And then they'll come back to me. Not very much longer. It's happened many times since I've been here. You know, I just no longer want to drink that wine. Or I don't like being in those bars where those friends go. Or suddenly that music that I loved last year, I can't be near it anymore. Because as we grow, when we're sincere and we're growing, parts of our life just either fall away or we have to extricate ourselves. When we're extricating ourselves, it's very difficult. And in fact, even those pieces that have to fall away, our language becomes different with certain people. We can no longer, we're just not speaking the same language. We don't like doing the same things. You know, I for years, I can't remember now, but let me say 15 years. Every single year, I went to Mexico with 2 friends. Every year, we did it. It was a thing. It was a week of the year. And we kept moving further and further south down the coast to be away from the crowds. We discovered places that then got to be literally like some of the most highly visited places in the world, but we were there before anybody was there. And as soon as the Europeans and other Americans started coming, we would leave. They were fabulous trips, fabulous. Wake up in the morning, I would do a long meditation, they would do yoga, then just talking, reading books, sharing. And then some years ago now, I had to say to them, I can't go anymore. They were devastated. I said, you two can still go. But of course, I knew this. They were not going to want to go if I wasn't there. It was a threesome. And I was an important piece in that. And when you take away that energy, a lot changed. Neither of them are on a spiritual path, but they both felt the energy that I brought. And it was a huge part of the trip. But I just couldn't do that anymore. Every place we went was becoming more popular, but I said, you know, I'm with you 5 days, and we never, ever once say the word God. I don't want to spend 5 days like that anymore. And you don't want to talk about God. I don't need you to talk about God, but I can't be with you. And I could tell you many, many more stories, my own and others, where relationships that are valued, we have to either sever it completely or change the relationship so much that people are hurt. Yet, because the question says, I felt it in my heart to be true and I sought spiritual guidance, I'm going to assume that was a good decision. And if I assume that, then I have to say, just like I was just saying with this question to David, nobody ever told us the spiritual path was easy. If it's easy, we are not making progress. That we have been told. If it's too easy, we're not making progress. So we have to, and this is another thing that I've said, that I really feel it's an image, but I feel it. We have lived millions of lives. Those things that we're holding on to that are hard, they have such a good grip on us. The things that were easy to let go of, we let go of them a long time ago. That vritti that still is tugging us like that little whirlpool of energy, it's really dug in there. And it's not going to be simple when you think of it as a stream, the amount of water that you would have to bring. It would have to be huge rainfalls. The river would really have to expand and take that whirlpool with it. Not a little trickle during a drought. It's not going to work. That's what we are all up against because we are highly evolved souls. Most of you have heard me say it, but I'll keep saying it. We wouldn't be here if we weren't. Remember what Master said. It takes very, very, very good karma, his words, to even want to know God. Never mind to be dedicating our lives to it. To be here on a Saturday morning. This took effort. It took energy. It takes a lot to tune in this way. You could easily say, I've heard Shanti speak so many times, or blah, blah, blah. I'm going to know everything she says, I'm already going to know. And you do. You actually do. But just as Pooja was saying, raises our energy, we take it in deeper, and we see that there is so much, the human heart will feel so much pain along the way. If we stop and give in to that pain, even when our soul is calling us to keep moving forward, then we're just standing still and sometimes losing ground. And if that's what we have to do, that's what we have to do. But if we can bear the pain, and, you know, it's like pulling a bandage off that's been on for a long time. It hurts for a few moments, and then the wound can heal because now it's time to be exposed to the air, to something other. Doesn't need to be covered anymore. I mean, there's so many analogies for it, but it's all true. Pain does not make something wrong. Sometimes we have to let friendships go. That's what I want to say to who asked that question. And if you've done that and you can't live with it, then you need to go back and find that friend again and try it again. It's just, you know, we're not here to torture ourselves. So, yeah. Piyush has a question.
Can you talk a little bit about, so I feel like there's phases in life where you might be more spiritually connected, and maybe you have phases where it sort of goes up and down. Can you talk a little bit about how to keep the right attitude through those phases, especially when you feel like you have a phase where you're not able to?
Yeah, which happens to all of us. And I mean, every one of us, we have times where the inspiration is flowing more easily and times when it won't. And we even get to the time, Swamiji talked about it. I mean, he talked about a couple of things that happened. Remember, first he said he could not see Master. He just couldn't conjure up an image of Master. But he also says, it's probably in the New Path, that he went through a very dry period. He couldn't meditate. You know, this is Swamiji, who was going to be free in this life. He just couldn't meditate. But he never, ever let himself forget what his goal was. He never, ever let himself forget that he wanted to be meditating, that he needed to be meditating. And he sat and he tried, even if it didn't go anywhere. Now, again, we're not Swamiji, we're not living at Mount Washington, all of which helps. We don't have Master floating in and out of our lives. We're not all here necessarily surrounded, like walk out your door and you can get that energy, which is what we hope is in community. But if we have rules for ourselves, the rules for ourselves, I am a soul on a journey. Even when the ego is stronger than I am in that moment, I will, for instance, I will never let a morning go where I don't at least go and sit and pranam to the masters. Never, never will I let that happen, nor will I ever go to sleep at night without doing that. So that's a rule. And it doesn't, you know, meditation is hard. It takes a lot of energy to be able to meditate. And the way the ego plays with us is by infecting our minds with laziness, dullness. These are the meannesses of the heart. This is what I was talking about. I don't know if you were here yet, Piyush, but this is what Patanjali talks about. Laziness, dullness, he uses that word, greed, all of the things, you know, the other things that we're doing with our life when we're not meditating. But we still want them in that moment more than we want to meditate. It's just the truth. We have to be honest about where we are, because people come to me all the time and say, I really want to, meditate more, but I really want to move into the community, but I really want to be a vegetarian, but no, you actually, not enough, not yet. And it's okay. They come to me, I'm still going to love you. I will always love you. You're perfect. And you just don't want it enough yet. As soon as you want it enough, there's ways to make it happen, no matter life circumstance. I used to say to people when I was more in medicine, and it was a perfect analogy, but it is still, unless somebody drops dead in front of you and you have to be doing CPR or calling 911, you have 5 minutes to meditate. I can't think of any other situation, unless somebody is really sick, that you cannot sit 5 minutes, 2 minutes. Just talk to God. There are many times where I couldn't meditate. You've heard me say this. I filled up so many books, handwritten, with japa. I wrote it when I couldn't meditate. I would just write it. Om Shri Rama Jaya Rama Jaya Jaya Ram. Om Shri Rama. Line after line after line. 100 books at least they were taken to India and put under murtis that were about to be installed. But they were written when I couldn't meditate. But it's easier to just write japa. Even if your mind wanders, you just keep writing. You do something so that you don't forget, even for this much time. And I think that's the only way, because if we beat ourselves up too much, if we make ourselves sit when we hate it, we'll really hate it. Not the way to do it. If we quit eating meat or fish when we're craving it, we're going to hate everything about it. The path makes me do this. Whatever it is, being nice to our partner, whatever it is, if it's too hard and we push. And Swamiji says this, I don't remember where, I'm sorry, there's so many sources that I go to for classes. But he says suppression is never the way to grow spiritually, never. And he's talking about it as much when people used to come to him. By the way, in the last couple of years of his life, he just didn't want people asking him about sex anymore. He was done with those same questions that come, but my partner, but. But when people would talk to him, this was primarily the way this question was answered. It was about sexuality. And he said, you don't get through it by suppressing those desires, by just trying to ignore them. We don't get through anything. We have to transmute it. Everything. About ego. Ego, which is everything. Everything, right? Yeah, you can't suppress. Do you remember? I'll repeat this.
I read it in Kriya Yoga as a quote from Devarshi. So.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Well, Devarshi is very often quoting Swamiji. So if he said it about ego, but it's true about everything. We can't just suppress, it makes the desire stronger. It just makes it more. So don't be brutal with yourself. But, none of us should. We just have to acknowledge it, but we always hold the goal. Don't let go of that.
Can you share a few more techniques or tricks that we could use when your ego is jumping up and down and you know that it's your ego, but how do you, by not suppressing it, but maybe befriending it or shifting the energy, what are the ways that we can work with the ego that keeps coming up?
Yeah, and of course it keeps coming up, and it will. And you're absolutely right. Again, you can't suppress those things. I think acknowledging it is whatever the it is. You know, I wish I had a different partner. I wish I had a partner. I mean, whatever, and that would make me happy. You know, I was just talking with somebody who has worked very hard to get on the path and is here, but then decided that he needed to go back and get another degree at Stanford. And I knew the end of the story. You know, you don't stay, and he was very new, what happened, and go and get another degree at Stanford and think, what, I'm just gonna do this in my spare time? No, that will become your life now. And I'm thinking to myself, for God's sake, he actually believes he needed another degree. Good job, great work, loving what he's doing. But like, it would be fun and interesting too. And I thought, okay, there it goes. And then he'll walk back in 10 years, 15 years, literally. And he'll say, Shanti, do you remember me? Right, we hear this. I don't know what happened. I was here, and I don't know what happened to these years. I know what happened, I'll never say that. I know exactly what happened to the years. We just, you know, we spin out here and there. So I say, do all of the things that we know, which of course you're doing. Satsang is so meaningful. Satsang, always try and spend some time. Go out of your way if you have to. Make the effort to spend time with people who are not just on the spiritual path, but who have been on it as long as you have, who are as sincere as you are, and if possible, people who have been on it longer, who you trust, who are really making that effort so that the conversation, the food, the energy, the music, if it comes on, is all going to be uplifting. Make an effort. And, you know, the ego doesn't like that. It just doesn't like it. When Barry wants to watch one of these shoot 'em up, they're not even shoot 'em ups anymore. They're like centuries ahead of us, and spaceships, and they're colliding in space, and they're making so much noise that the television, which is on completely the opposite side of the house, shakes the house. So doors are closed, so I can't hear it, but it's shaking the house. Makes me, I put my headphones on, I do whatever I can do, and put music through it when I'm working, our music. But if I tried to insist that he listen to our music, it would be just as awful for him. So we are vibrating at certain frequencies, and when something else comes in, it's off-putting. And we can do that with the ego. We can trick it, because it doesn't like Om playing in the background. It really doesn't. It doesn't like spiritually uplifting colors everywhere. It doesn't like that we stop. I have a picture of the masters, and at least 3 Ganeshas, and Lakshmi, and Shiva, little Murtis, all of this in this place where what it was built for was to hold a microwave. But all in my kitchen, the ego does not like that stuff. And it's really remarkable how, if we live in these, this isn't a should, but if you come into Iris, the place where I live, you will not see a picture or anything on the walls that doesn't have to do with spirituality and uplifting, except I just put up one of Nivedita's paintings, and I'm about to do a second one, because I know her, I know where the inspiration comes from to paint. Otherwise, the only paintings I have are Jyotish's. It's just, pictures of Swamiji and a little piece of his hair and a little piece of his robe. Why do we bid on these things at auctions when we have them? Because that's what we want to surround ourselves with. And soon, honestly soon, the ego just starts quieting, because it's the wrong vibration for it. So we know what to do. And I mean, I know you know everything I'm saying, but do it. Isn't that the name of one of Swamiji's books? Something about, Do it now. It's not as easy as it sounds, is it? Kushi has a question, but you have to have the mic. Oh, Lakshmi's going to give her something.
The question that builds on top of what you were just now saying. So sometimes when you
Speak up a little bit.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Now I can hear you better.
So I was saying I'm going to build
put-
on top of what you were saying. So when karma is going through us, or we're going through karma, say we have given someone pain in a previous lifetime for something, it has to come back at us, and it's the law of karma, we have to fulfill that. So I was wondering, Ma, when you know it is karma, it is coming for karmic reasons, and when you withdraw from ego, you may not feel it as much, because in the center, it's still pure joy, it's still pure love. But then when you return to the ego, that is when you feel the pain, because you have to still live that karma. So I wonder, Ma, what is the right way to go through this? Like, is it that the karma has to play it out, and so you have to give, in your ego, you have to experience that much pain, versus do you just withdraw within and acknowledge it, like you were saying, and try to rise above it? I don't even know what it means to rise above it, but I hope the question made sense, Ma.
Yeah. So without a doubt, I would say to you again and again and again, go within, go within, go within. Because what's happening within means karma is being burned in a fire of purification. That's what's happening in the Sushumna as we raise energy. So this is a very human thought, totally understandable, completely. I'm not at all making fun of you, you know that. But it's the human mind that says, I have to work out everything here. It's the human mind that thinks you have to work it out. You don't. You don't. Remember the story where, much more will happen that you won't even know about. The more time you can spend internalizing all of your energy, always keeping your awareness here. So much happens. Desires, karma, everything drop away. That's what I was saying. You suddenly realize, I don't want to go out in the world and be with those friends. And as one woman was telling me a couple of years ago, and just have a couple of hits of dope and drink some wine and have some fun at a bar. I want to do that still. Do it. Then suddenly they're saying to me, I don't want to do that anymore. It wasn't because she stayed out here and worked it out. So you remember this story where it was a master, might have been Sri Yukteswar, but it doesn't matter, who had a devotee who really, really wanted to get married. But he was a monk. That was his nature. And Sri Yukteswar knew that was his true karma. So he said, come with me. And they went on a train. And he said, look, I'll finish this story, even though you're shaking your head and you know it. Look, he said, and the man turned. And in the window of a train passing by was a beautiful woman. And he looked at that woman, and from then on, he didn't want to get married. The guru takes us and neutralizes that karma, takes it away from us, takes it on in a moment like that. So the more we can be away from ego, the better chance we have of the guru. That's what we want. We want them to take that karma. Yes, we've done such horrible things in past lives. Master says it's a blessing that we can't remember. I wish I could forget earlier in this life, knowing the things that I've done. And I actually really mean that. I've hurt a lot of people in this life, but I am not going to dwell on it. And the only thing I'm going to do is keep going in, meditate, deeper, longer, thirsty, guru-given meditations. And I am going to practice constantly opening my heart and seeing God in every person that I see. And trust, the better I get at that, all of what I've done, and I still know it, it's not, the mind doesn't forget. It's not mine anymore, Master. You take it. And I mean that. And this is where I think self-honesty is important. It's not that you say, oh, I'm just going to forget about it. No, we don't. Master, you take it. If that person that I hurt needs healing, of course it was their karma too, or I wouldn't have hurt them. But it's in God's hands. And boy, that means so much more than our human minds can imagine that it means. Everything is in God's hands. Everything. Even that great little soul that you're cradling in your arms so beautifully makes it feel like it's ours, doesn't it? They just come for a little bit so we can keep them safe and send them back to God. Very hard to do, but the truth. Yeah. Anybody else have any questions?
How do you do the reading practice or inspiration? How do you lose inspiration? Because we lose that. We lose inspiration off and on. How do you loom it in face of the rub?
Yeah, I think, honestly, Pooja, I could say it. I think it's just the answer that I've been saying to so many questions. How do we keep our inspiration high? I really will say that for most of us, probably for all of us, of course, we have those great meditations. And I find, this morning I was digging in my purse for my beads, and these beads came up. These are very special beads. I've had them for a long time, and Swamiji blessed them. He didn't give it to me, but his picture's on here. But I couldn't find the mala that I use all the time. I've used this, I don't know how many years now. It's just been everywhere with me. It's been blessed by every saint I visited everywhere. And I had a moment of panic, because, of course, meditations are great, our malas are great. I think satsang is the most important thing that any of us can do. You're in a bad mood, go to a class. You're feeling lack of inspiration, find your way to something. Don't stay home. The only time I ever let myself do that, you remember the story, I was so mad at Master, I couldn't come to Sunday service. There was this huge dilemma in the community about my getting an apartment. Everybody knows this story, so I don't really want to repeat the whole thing. But I spent hours in our temple. At that time, it was over in 102 or whatever that is. You remember Chidambar, over on that side. I just sat there in this one little room yelling at Master, if you want me to move, give me the money. Give me the money. You always say you can do all these miracles. I was alone in the temple. Create a miracle. Put the money, give me the money to make the move. I go to my mailbox after that, and there's $5,000 waiting for me. Literally, that's a true story. And I've said this, the friend of mine who sent me $5,000, I called her, I said, I'm not taking money from you. That's absurd. I'm a physician. I make money. She said to me, we want you to have the money. We don't want you, of all people, she said, because she knew I'd been known to sort of let money pass through me to others frequently. She said, you shouldn't be worrying about money. So then it came to me, Master, I believe, said to me, how did you think I was going to get you the money? Did you think I was going to show up with $1,000 bills in your house? No, take the money. It's the only time, that I think, and we have to know when we need to do that, but coming and being with our Guru Bhais and hearing this music, and I guarantee anybody that if you're fretting about something, you will hear the perfect song. I would say no less, I don't want to exaggerate, let's say 300 to 400 times when I've given a sermon. Even when I've thought to myself, I sit down afterwards, I think, that was so awful, I'm embarrassed. Even when I've gone through those moments, which I've gone through, somebody comes up to me and says to me, you said exactly what I needed to hear today. And then I say to myself, of course, because it's them. You know, they could have made it a great sermon in my mind if they wanted to. It doesn't matter what I think about it. People always come up and say, after every sermon, that's why I'm saying 300, it's not just sermons. You said exactly what I needed to hear. Well, I didn't say it, that's for sure. But you come to where the inspiration is and don't let yourself say otherwise. You can say, no, Shanti said, so I'm going. Just say those words to yourself. Because finding a friend to be with, there's just nothing like it, you know? Nothing like it. I remember when Kamala Devi and I started doing this once a month, getting together in the morning for 2 hours. And you know, she moves at a very different pace than I do. Though I am trying to calm and slow down. And she's made some effort in certain circumstances to speed up a little. And so we're coming closer in that. But with our very different ways of doing things, I don't know how many times we did that. We're just about to get back in it next week because the holidays happened, Australia happened. Anyway, I never left those times, even when I would think, oh, I'm so busy. I can't go and sit there for 2 hours. That she didn't say several things to me that were so, she said, spoke the truth. She spoke truth. And I slowed down and I listened. She had the room to get to it. And I left feeling so different than I might have walked in. It never fails. Those are such special times. Finding a friend and saying, let's just spend an hour. Let's just do it. And you know, there are many people in this room that I do that with. But I think because it was new to Kamala Devi and I to meet like that, we just dove deeper in our relationship, really. And so much wisdom came. So much wisdom. I'm really grateful. So that's satsang. That's truth with spiritually like spirited souls, I would say. Beautiful. So it's 10:45. And if there's another question, I'm happy to answer it. And if there isn't, we can end. And look at this. It's not even raining, which is pretty amazing. Yeah. Good? Thank you all for being here. And thank the masters. Just